All right, Jules, we touched upon four factors, if you want to include the Saudi factor into it, that are driving this down. The Saudi factor, I think, was just something that delayed things a year ago when they put this money in. And I hope I'm not boring everybody, but I just want to get into this a little bit.
No, it's really interesting. People need to understand.
So the three things are the business side of it and the overall health of the business. The fact that there's new analytics-driven approach in almost every club.
Yeah.
People are saying, we've overpaid for these older players. We really have in the past. We're looking for value, right?
Yeah.
And there's a regulation piece to it. Let's start with the regulation piece, which is easy. These financial fair play rules on the UEFA side have been in place for a long time in different leagues. They've had different rules, the wage caps in La Liga, here in England, the profit and sustainability rule, all this stuff has all come together. But I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is a real willingness to enforce them, right? We've seen it with Barcelona getting hammered by La Liga over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. And other Spanish clubs as well. There's plenty that we don't mention much, but who are under very strict conditions too.
But because they know it's not just the rule that's strict, but there's a hunger to enforce it. Right? They're willing to enforce it. And I think that was huge.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Last season, what we saw here, sorry, Everton fans, but like Everton and Forest, because you can have fines for speeding, but then if I don't get a ticket,
you keep speeding,
Exactly. And I think that's been a big factor. I think UEFA now feel more empowered to apply the rules.
Yeah.
And to have different types of rules, as well as kind of this, what they call the squad cost ratio. Essentially, you can only spend a certain amount. It's going to be 90% of your annual revenue.
Yeah.
And it's going to go down to 70% pretty quickly. So that has a dampening effect. We agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're very careful on how you spend your money, like you said, but also on wages. I know a lot of players right now who are either looking to move or are free agent, who know that they're not going to get the same money that they were on under contract last season, wherever they were, even as a free agent. So I think a lot of clubs are looking at reducing their wage bill already. Whether you give a longer term contract and in the end, the wages is still less, or you just go, listen, I can't pay you 5-8 million a year anymore, 10 million a year anymore. This is not possible. And in that way, we saw it with Gundogan. We mentioned Federico Chiesa together when we were preparing for the show. Clubs cannot afford to pay someone like Chiesa 13 million euros a year in wages. It's not possible anymore.
So is it just, when you say it's not possible,
I think
it is possible.
It's
more like they don't want to.
Yeah, they don't want to, exactly. Sorry.
Because I think they see the value in the younger players. And look, and this is the Chelsea model, which if you want, has been taken to an absolute extreme, right? So you turn these players into assets, you monetize them. I know people don't like it, and it's our company policy to say, no, we don't want you to say so-and-so, we don't want you to say Dominic Solanke was sold to Bournemouth, to Spurs, which, however way you think of it, the reality is, in this context, it's appropriate to talk that way.
Yeah.
Because these players are now being treated like, even more so than before, like assets.
Like
and obviously, let's remind everybody that before we get sanctimony from fans of American sports, most players in American sports have no say when they get traded.
Yeah.
Okay? In football, every single player can turn down a move. Everybody, okay? On this side of the pond. So please, no lectures from over there. Because I've had this. I get it on social media with some regularity, and it just really does my head in.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, some basketball players find out from Woj that they've been traded. So,
Exactly. So that kind of financialization of football means that, look, objectively, a younger player has more value. A younger player costs you less money. And players have certain expectations. Nobody says, oh, well, I was making 100 before. I mean, I think it's like real life, right? If I was making 100, I don't want to make 60 later. Even if I move to a smaller club, right? Unless I have to.
Yeah.
Or they do the thing which we see often, like, okay, well, I'll take 60, but then I want a 5-year deal, right? Yeah. Which really constricts the club. And I think that's a big part of it. I think the other thing in this context is I think people just prefer younger players because they're more pliable, they're more amenable to following instructions. I think what we're saying, I saw with Barcelona last week, right? So obviously there's no De Jong, there's no Gundogan. Now we know why. Oriol Romeo's gone.
Yeah.
And you have these two guys named Mark. Was that their name?
So Bernal, yeah.
But Mark Bernal and Mark Casado, right?
Casado, yeah.
17 and 20. Who are these dudes? They probably make minimum wage.
Yeah. From the academy.
Come onto the field and they play against Valencia and they don't look out of place. I'm not saying either one is going to turn into the next big thing. But if I have two fungible guys who I can pay minimum wage versus 25 million a year for Frankie de Jong, or however much he's on, it's less than that now.
Less than that, but yeah.
Or the massive Sergio Roberto.
Yeah.
Why do I want this older guy who then I can't sell, I can't move on?
Absolutely.
Right? So there is more and more of this thinking everywhere.
Yeah, but because before there was so much money involved in the game that you didn't have to be smart. You didn't have to be cautious or careful in the way you were doing things. It was very much, it felt a lot of the times that agents were in a way running clubs, a lot of clubs, by imposing their rules almost. I want that much for my client. I want that for client. I want that wages, this bonus, this transfer fee, etc. And now it's clearly shifting. It's clearly changing. Agents are still very important and they are a massive part of the game, whether we like them or not. But it feels like, certainly to me, that clubs have taken back quite a lot of the control of how you do things now, whether then players and agents are happy or not, it doesn't matter so much. We've seen a lot of deals this summer that didn't happen in the end because clubs were not willing or happy to pay over the odds a transfer fee or wages or even agent fees too.
I spoke to an agent whose name you would recognize very recently, who does a lot of work as an intermediary, also does some player representation. And he said, basically, this summer we're making most of our money by taking players away from clubs, because the clubs are paying us to take players away, than they are for us to bring players to the club, which
I'm not surprised.
Which is a pretty seminal shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I wonder is, underlying this, is there an issue with a broader business of football? Because we have this idea, investment, growth, blah blah blah. It's not like we make a living talking about it, right? But with any business, there are corrections.
Yeah,
and football had a situation where for a long time it lost a ton of money. Then financial fair play came in. Then the books got better.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've made the point in the past, like when people put a valuation on a club, right? We made the point, the Glazers wanted $8 billion for Manchester United.
Yeah.
They had to settle for a little more than $5 billion as a valuation, right?
Yeah.
The other ones, Fenway wanted $3 billion for Liverpool. Like, hey, look, nobody's showing up, right? People said at the time, $2.5 billion for Chelsea is completely out of kilter with reality, right? So all these things, I think, put together makes us wonder. And I think what we want to talk about is a business getting worse, right? So traditionally, very basically, football clubs make money one of three ways. They make money through the box office of the stadium.
Yeah.
They make money from media rights, and they make money from commercial. There's a classic, what they call the 3-2-1 ratio, right? So let's just look at all these income streams. When it comes to stadiums, we've seen, obviously, United are talking about a new stadium. Barcelona are working on theirs. Real Madrid just redid theirs. I kind of get a sense, though, you're kind of hitting your head against the ceiling, right? In a sense, your stadium can only be so big.
Yeah.
You can only charge so much money.
Yeah. And yes, you can have boxes and very expensive locations within your stadium to try to raise your revenue and making more money. And some very rich people will pay a lot of money to get a box at X stadium somewhere in Europe or in the world. But yeah, you're right. There's 60,000 people. You can have maybe up to, if you have a 60,000 seater, your season ticket holders can be up to maybe 40,000 because you still need some general sale or different style of sale. Plus your boxes, it gets to a point where you can't keep putting the prices up. We see a lot of clubs just freezing the amount that people pay for tickets. And this is it. So it's not going to come from ticket revenue or gate revenues that you're going to make much, much more money than what you already make, basically. Unless you go for a brand new stadium twice the size of your current one.
A name drop. I spoke to the chief executive of a very well-known Premier League club, and he made the point that if we increase our ticket prices for like the average fan, 5%, we're going to make maybe an extra 3-4 million a year. And we're going to have freaking revolt
Of course.
on our hands. And it's just not worth it. So in some ways, and I get, you get people from the US coming over and saying like, oh, look, if I want to go watch the New York Giants at that crappy stadium in off of exit 16W, I got to pay, the cheapest tickets. Not that you can get tickets because they're always sold out, but like $800, $1,000, and here, even at Arsenal, face for the cheapest ticket, if you can get it, or if you get somebody's season ticket, it's going to be what, 50, 60 pounds?
Yeah,
these are
it
the
depends
most
on the
expensive.
opposition, but yeah.
These are the most expensive tickets in the Premier League, right? The most expensive, cheapest tickets, if you will, right? So, and I think it's the same around Europe, and in fact, it's more so in Germany.
It's really cheap,
the fans, take to the streets, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to squeeze more money. You can get stadium naming rights. You can make more luxury boxes.
Yeah.
But even then, Jules, with the luxury boxes, if I'm in a part of the world, if I'm in Paris, if I'm in Munich, there's a lot of rich people. If I'm in a part of the world where there are not a lot of rich people,
no, that's true.
Who am I selling that box to?
That's very
because I can give you the box. In fact, I'm going to say Arsenal again because a friend of mine had an experience there where he had this match day package. It was a gift where you can drive right into the stadium.
Yeah.
You get a you arrive there like 4 hours before kickoff. You get like a 7-course Michelin star, but from a legit Michelin star chef.
Mont Blanc. Yeah.
Right. You get there and the heated seats and all this crap, right? Yeah. But how many people the person who bought him that ticket obviously can afford? How many people can afford that, right? So you're not going to sell those.
No.
So I think to some degree that part is kind of topped out. That's not going to increase.
Yeah. I mean, do as well as you can, obviously, and get as much money as you can from your ticket revenue and get revenue. But
so there are some who can improve because they have old, crappy stadiums, like some Serie A clubs, for example, right?
Yeah, of course. But even Everton, it would make a big difference for them to go into the new stadium, although that stadium is costing them also a lot of money that then you have to pay back. So
that part's not going to grow. The media rights. I think what we've seen, I made this point before, everybody's kind of talking about, well, the big TV companies, like, dude, 1980s are over, or 1990s, or 2000, whatever decade. That's done. I'm not saying we worked for TV. Look, premium rights overvalued for a long time, right? And now some reality's hitting. Now some people who were maybe buying rights for political reasons because they wanted influence. Yes, I'm talking about you being. Now they're saying, hey, we kind of want to break even and make. I mean, you saw that in France, right?
Yeah, completely, absolutely.
People want to run his businesses now.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it. And you can blame piracy, you can blame attention span, you can blame whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing that the rights are flat.
Yeah, completely. I mean, they're never gonna increase again, I think. I think they reach a ceiling which we saw coming. Not that the bubble is gonna explode just yet, but they will stagnate, maybe getting lower a little bit, not dramatically for the Premier League, for example. But things have changed.
If you adjust for inflation for the Premier League, we said like they're 15% lower than they were a decade ago.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, so then the next one is commercial and sponsorship.
Yeah.
And it's the first week of the season. And did you notice who Chelsea? I know you were on holiday. Did you know who Chelsea's sponsor were in week one?
Yeah. It's no one.
Yeah. So,
but remember last season already, they struggled to sell that shirt. In the end, they got Infinite Athlete or Athlete Infinity, whatever it's called.
Infinite Athlete. Yeah.
Infinite Athlete.
So, okay, this has been a long running thing. Remember, we did our thing with Ricardo Ford. I don't understand the shirt sponsorship. I think shirt sponsorships I'm guessing, are pretty much worthless for most companies. What I mean by this is, and this is why we're seeing so many companies that are flush with cash, thinking short term, and they just want to get their name out there. And that's why we've seen so many gambling ones, right? Yeah. All those 888, 999, that weird man bet thing that sounds like Grindr, right? Was it Vols and Villa they're doing? And then you get all the crypto stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, I just want market share, and I don't care what I'm paying for it. But take those away. How many? And again, I don't want to diss companies who might want to sponsor the Gab Juls Show one day, but you see a pattern to it, right? If I'm at it's different. Yeah. Like you're wearing a City shirt that's sponsored by Etihad Airways. Yeah. Etihad have some connection, I believe, to the owners of the club, and you can argue it's They serve like Emirates. They're like a hub airway. You want to fly to Australia, you'll change here. You get the money, whatever.
Yeah.
You can see some logic in that, right?
Yeah.
But remember when Manchester United did the deal with Chevy?
Yeah, I was going to say Chevrolet. Do you think they sold more cars?
Yeah, who's gonna be like, oh, look, I will consider. I'd never heard of this brand, right?
No, but maybe you just think like, hey, it's a good idea to drive a Chevrolet because they're sponsoring much something. No?
Yeah, or maybe you're a City fan and now you think, I'll never buy one because they're sponsoring. It's a tricky one with sponsorship,
it
right?
is. And some I think pay a lot of money for it, like Chevy at the time. Others, not so much.
Right.
But
that's why you get also weirdo brands that nobody's ever heard, like Team Viewer. What the hell's that, right? Like, and there's a reason I think many times like successful brands tend to repeat, and if they don't repeat, maybe there's a reason for that. So I think that whole segment, there are other ways to make money. Obviously, if you're a football club on the commercial side. But it's hard. It's hard because you have to come up with original ideas and whatever else. You know, for a while, clubs says like, oh, let's make our own TV channels. We'll show old games. We'll show. Remember the early iteration of Manchester United television? They had like cooking shows and stuff like that with the club chef. Like, this is fine. Just people aren't really going to pay for that.
No, that's true. So I guess transfers and having a strong academy to produce players who then you let go at some point. Is I think what a lot of clubs aspire to do at some point. It's just not that easy.
And also, if going forward nobody has money, who are you going to sell all your starters?
That's true.
So all that said, I think it's going to be correction. I think wages are going to come down, costs are going to come down. Because this is a nice thing about football as a business, right? There's no other. It's not like you run a factory where you've got a unionized workforce and you got to look after these people until they retire at 60 or 65, right? In football, every year. Like a quarter of your team goes out of contract.
Yeah.
So if you need to cut back, you know that those costs will be gone.
Yeah.
And you can replace them from kids in the academy.
Exactly.
You can replace them with cheaper alternatives. So as a business, I think it'll continue to run. But I think we are entering some kind of recession here or correction.
Football correction or football recession. All that said, Gabby, we also expect for the next 10 days now, because the transfer window is open for 10 days, it will be a big chaos at times. You know, the late deals where the clubs do it to correct something that they saw in the first 3 weeks of the season, a bit of panic buy for players who are with just 1 year left on the contract and are panicking a little bit. I need a club. Maybe putting there
were players who are being forced out. Like, if I stay here, do I get paid, but then I don't play? There's a ton of that going on. There's free agents.
Yeah.
I think this will really be the domain of Romano, Ornstein, all these transfer gods that we worship, Di Marzio, all these guys. So
they'll be busy. The next
stay busy. And hey, and we'll be here to opine on it.